Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Blue Knight 7 again with episode 29 of the Blue Knight cast. And today, I feel like this is, well, it is the third episode dedicated to this event, but I did want to give my post Sony State of Play reaction to the games announced and just the announcements made during this State of Play, and sort of give my take on it, which is one, great state of play, probably the best ever, and two, we had, if you Switch 2 players like me, just had a great second partner direct for 2026. But I'm going to try to go into dig a little more detail into this, talk about it, talk about big picture implications, and just why I thought this was actually a very good state of play, and kind of raised expectations for those in the future, and just commentary on how I think game releases are about to improve significantly for this generation, probably starting now. But before I do, please take a moment to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I am trying to put out content more regularly, and hope you enjoy my commentary on the games industry. And let's get into it. So, generally speaking, I don't really get excited whenever I hear about a state of play coming. And that's because in the past, what you would usually see is a focus on a couple of first-party exclusives coming up. You'll find out about a couple of first-party games going to PC, usually. And you might get some third-party announcements, but they wasn't humongous surprises. And then you might get treated to random introduction to a live service game that nobody wanted. Concord. That being said, this one was pretty good. Probably the best state of play ever. And to start with, and I'm saying this to Sony's credit, we talk about the console wars being broke down and question the importance of having a console at times. But I do think Sony still understands the basic thing that I think Microsoft kind of forgot or threw out the window or quit caring about, which is that you got to give people a reason to buy the PlayStation hardware. Like, what do we have that the others don't? So I do see sort of a commitment, at least for now, to keep some exclusives on the system, and they did show some games that appeared to be console exclusive so far. And some of this may change later. I'm just going on the current snapshot of what we're looking at right now with the state of play. But the new Kena game looked pretty good. I get that it's an indie game, and I get that it probably doesn't push the PS5 graphically. But there's something to be said about a good, well done, artfully done, tastefully looking game. Nintendo has understood that for years with its games, and Kena just seems to get it. And it does. It looked very good. I gotta say, bravo. It looked like a improvement over the original game. Looked like a game worthy of your time on PS5. Also, and this is a game that's caught my interest as a PC gamer, like I might actually buy this on Steam one day, is Marvel Tokon Fighting Spirits. The Marvel fighting game that seems to have a lot of Japanese influence on the art style. It just looks good. It's got my attention. I'm not really a fighting game person, so I'd like to know a little more about how well it plays, like how accessible it is to a person that likes to play around with Street Fighter and Killer Instinct, but or plays well with Smash Brothers, but not the most technical fighting gamer. I wonder, just how good this is for that. And I feel like it's going to be a technical one. So I'd like to find out more about it, but they definitely have my interest on that game. I can't remember the exact title, I don't have it in front of me, but Windless, the game where you played the giant chicken, caught my attention. And that was like, okay, now we have someone trying to do something creative. I looked into it. It's based on some Korean literature that's basically the Korean equivalent to The Lord of the Rings. It's like a prequel to a novel there. And so it has kind of a literary basis for what it is. But without knowing that, I just saw this trailer where this basically giant chicken was fighting off hordes of warriors, like Dynasty Warrior style, and it just looked awesome. Like, I actually hope it goes multi-platform. Didn't seem to be, but finally we're getting something that's a little different with some creativity here. And we could argue it's not the most creative game design, but it has me talking about it. And normally I wouldn't talk about something random PS5 console exclusive from a state of play. So that should tell you something. If you want a good game, just make a good experience, make it memorable. That's really what it should be about. And I'm probably calling stuff out of order here, but bear with me. But Silent Hill Townfall, I can't say I'm a Silent Hill gamer or a survival horror gamer in general, but it actually looked interesting to me. Like, Silent Hill has always kind of intrigued me, but I never got into it. And seeing this one, I was kind of curious. Like, I kind of looked up Silent Hill enough to know kind of how they work and how their lore works, and the usual tropes of a Silent Hill game. And this one just kind of seemed interesting to me. Like, who is this character? Why is he there? And in that town, and why is this a different town? Yeah, I realize Silent Hill F took place in its own town, but just kind of curious about it. Like, is that one to maybe try out? But I don't know. John Wick, yeah, if it goes to PC, I'm getting it. That just looked great. I mean, John Wick, yeah, he needed a video game. So they kind of hit it out of the park pretty good just getting that far. And then towards the end, God of War trilogy being remade. That's one for the fans. And then they closed with Sons of Sparta. Now, I'll talk a little more about it in a minute, but for now I'll just say, yeah, it was interesting. 2D God of War game. I actually appreciated the art style, the detailed sprite work. I'm a sprite guy, so if you can't tell. So, to me that was worth attention, and that was a great one more thing. But what I was most personally drawn to, being a PC gamer and a Nintendo gamer, obviously, was, I'm going to name 4 games in particular. Tokon and Silent Hill, I've already talked about them. I think they're coming to Steam, so there's that. And the rest of these will probably come to Steam too, but for Nintendo Switch in particular, Rayman 30th Anniversary Collection. I kind of missed Rayman because I went from, when I was a kid, because I went from Super NES to Nintendo 64 and didn't have a PlayStation. I didn't have a Game Boy Advance when they were actually popular. I kind of got mine later, and really it was played. The GBA games I have was mostly played through the back compatibility on a DS Lite that I had. So that was GBA gaming for me. But we have this collection, 30th anniversary. It has PlayStation, the other consoles, Game Boy Advance, which was the only real Nintendo. Well, there's a Game Boy Color as well, I believe. But it also has the Super NES prototype for Rayman. And yeah, I'm interested in that one. Also, and this was kind of a mind-blowing moment for most people, but Castlevania coming back. They gave Konami this whole section just to them, where they kind of talked about 4 different games, but the 2 that everybody's really talking about is number 1, Castlevania, Belmont's Curse, made by the same people who developed Dead Cells, with some kind of collaboration or assist from the people who developed the 2D Prince of Persia game we had. I believe it was last year. And it looked very good. The graphics were more akin to Dead Cells to me, 2D sprites, but very detailed 2D sprite animation. Curious what they're doing lore-wise. Trying not to get too deep into it, without spoiling much, but it seems that they might have retconned some things that happened between Trevor Belmont and Simon Belmont. I'll just leave it at that. But not really clear. But it is supposed to be an actual canonical Castlevania game that takes place about 23 years after Castlevania 3, if I understand correctly. And it looked very good. It just looked good. For a 2D sprite-based, old-school Castlevania side-scrolling game, it looked awesome. The other big mind-blowing thing that most people were talking about is Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 2. And apparently this collection it's a smaller collection in a way, but it includes Metal Gear Solid 4. It also includes Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, and it includes Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel, which was sort of a non-canonical Game Boy game, plus a digital soundtrack for Volume 2, playable by a music player within the games. But the important part here is you got Metal Gear Solid 4 for the first time available for consoles outside of PlayStation 3. Why is this a big deal if you don't know? Well, the PlayStation 3 had a very unique processor known as the Cell processor that was very complicated, and most developers really didn't use its full capacity or tailored their games that specific to the Cell processor because it was just real complicated. It had a complicated array. It was basically a multi-core processor before multi-core became cool. And it was just very hard to develop for. But at the time, Hideo Kojima, still with Konami, kind of worked with it and tailored Metal Gear Solid 4 to try to get as much out of that Cell processor as they could. And the end result was a very big graphical jump for Metal Gear at the time, And it was just kind of an important game because, I mean, there's a big rabbit hole of Metal Gear lore we can get into, but you could say this is the finale of the series, with the games after it fleshing out past events before that took place before this game. But if you want sort of the conclusion to the Metal Gear saga, to me this is very much it. And it's always been kind of locked on the PlayStation 3, so now it's available. My guess is they somehow came to a version that could work better on other consoles. There was a rumored Xbox 360 version, I believe. Maybe they dug it up. It just never made the light of day. Maybe they dug that one up. Or maybe they finally got the emulation to where it just works well. Not sure, but it's coming in August. They updated the Metal Gear Solid Volume 1 collection for Switch 1 as well to run better. I think it runs a lot better on Switch 2. So now we have this, I'm assuming, just for Switch 2. As well as PS5, because that's what we're here for, right? State of Play. And yeah, that was big, jaw-dropping news in and of itself. I would also like to take a moment to call attention to Mina the Hollower, which is an indie game developed by Yacht Club Games, the Shovel Knight people. I'll just say I'm a fan of Yacht Club Games. I'm a fan of Celia B, who is sort of their social media manager. She's a regular on the Spawncast, if y'all know what I'm talking about. If not, look up Spawnwave, amazing YouTuber for video game news. He holds a regular podcast every Saturday night at 9. And to me, it's one of the best podcasts in gaming, and Celia is actually a regular contributor to that, as well as being an employee of Yacht Club Games by day. And but anyway, I've been closely following this game because Shovel Knight's a very good game. But it's one of my, if I was just to filter out the indie games, it would be one of my favorites. The original Shovel Knight, the Shovel of Hope campaign, has one of the best final boss battles I've ever experienced, if you ask me. And this is their new game, which is more of a take to the older top-down adventures, like old school Zelda, let's say, or old school RPG-like games, or action RPG games. And it seems to be like a weird mix of Zelda, Castlevania, and Bloodborne when you watch it in action. And it also has sort of a Game Boy Color motif, like if Shovel Knight was 8-bit gaming that cheats a little bit with what it can do. This seems to be a Game Boy Color game cheating at what it should supposed to be able to do. And it looks excellent. They were going to release it in last October, but then they delayed it, I understand, for more polish. But they announced on the State of Play that it was coming in this spring. And they gave PlayStation an exclusive demo for the game. So if you have a PlayStation 5, download the demo, try it out. I do think it'll be... I know a game like Shovel Knight probably wouldn't have the impact today that it did back in, I believe it was 2014. But I do think this is going to be an excellent quality game that's probably going to make an impact of its own. I would watch that game very closely. And I know that's a day one buy for me on my Switch 2. That being said, Tokon, Silent Hill, Rayman 30th Anniversary, Belmont's Curse, Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 2, Mina the Hauler. I'll go ahead and throw in John Wick because I'm sure it'll have to go to Steam at some point. Even Windless. If you put those together for me as a PC Switch 2 gamer, assuming, I'm assuming a lot of this will go to Steam as well. This was a great state of play presentation for me. Probably the best state of play I'm aware of. I think most people are saying the same thing. But for me, it was also just a great Nintendo Partner Direct number 2. Because, let's be honest, if you put Rayman, Castlevania, Metal Gear, and I'm throwing in Mina the Hauler, and just had those 4 added to the Partner Direct last time, I think people would scream it's one of the best Partner Directs ever. And if you just made a second Partner Direct that just had those 4 things, hear me out, just had those 4 things, I would argue that would have been a great, like a way above average Partner Direct on its own. Yeah, someone would have complained you only had like 4 games or whatever. I know. But it would have been quality, and that's the point. Quality. And that's just how I see that. The last Partner Direct had quality. You had Pragmata, you had Resident Evil Requiem, even though we already knew about them. I still think Bomberman was one of the best announcements, and I don't care what anybody says. But this was good too. This was very good. This was, I would argue, Sony trying to step up their game on state of play. Now, what does this mean in the big picture? I'm going to say that we might be, at least for a while, be able to put down the complaints about the generation, because I feel like we're just now getting some good announcements. Let's forget about COVID a minute. Let's forget about development cycles a minute. Let's forget about these different problems you can blame for the generation being slow to start or not feeling like it started. I think we can put that down because we're finally just getting some interesting games announced that are worthwhile. These are games that have been worked on, may not have been ready. Maybe Sony had hoped some live service games like Concord or Marathon would have been had a lot more traction and just doing well to fill the gaps that we've had to deal with. I do think that was also part of the problem. Live service games going bust. Dead on arrival. But with this, what I'm seeing is the non-live service games have finally kind of started to roll down the last part of the assembly line, ready to announce, ready to go, and we're finally hearing about the good stuff. This is kind of the stuff I would argue we should have been hearing about or seeing something about, or at least had been closer to being ready sometime during the last 5 years. Let's be honest. But with this, I feel like we're getting kicked in full swing. Switch 2 is out in the world, which I do consider the same generation as the PS6 when it comes out. I already said it before. Switch 1 was the same gen as PS5 and Xbox Series. You don't have to like it, it's just true. We got Switch 2 now. It has its own games. I feel like developers are finally got back in sync after COVID, after maybe not being fully prepared for the transition to PS5 and Xbox Series. We're starting to maybe actually get a quantity of games so that are worth talking about. So that's how I see it. That's how I feel about it. I believe things will get better from here. There's other challenges. I think pricing and things, affordability is still going to be a challenge going forward. But as far as having games to choose from, if you already got the hardware, I think this is going to start getting a lot better. I really do. Oh yeah, quick shout out to Saros as well. But that being said, there's one other thing. Sons of Sparta, is it going multi-platform